Hello and welcome, I'm Raziel, and if you're on the Dark Council Facebook group, you would have seen this picture, which I'm showing on screen right now. It is that Wild West Exodus is going to be at Adepticon 2025. Now, take this with a pinch of salt, because it could mean, brand new edition, etc., more models, which would always be super cool, but highly likely it's going to be a campaign, Badland Adventures. Now, having a campaign at Adepticon isn't a bad thing. It's actually quite good. It's a good form of advertising for Wild West Exodus and War Cradle, showing off their fantastic game, which is absolute blast to play, and that everyone should play. It's basically £50 to get in, and that's all to play the game, and that's all you need. Oh, sorry, £40. So it's £40 to play the game, and that's all you need. You just need to buy the one posse box, and you're done. Anyway, so if it is a campaign, like I said, it's good advertisement for War Cradle. It's great because people are going to see the game being played, people are going to see the models being used, and the people having fun around it. So this is a very good thing. Now, what if it is a new edition? Let's speculate wildly on this one. Because Badland Adventures is quite an interesting title because it really indicates, I would say, three different factions very readily. Now, the Badlands in Arizona is a big desert, basically. A lot of dinosaur bones are found there. I think it's one place I actually want to go to dig up fossils. I think it would be really interesting to go. And so, what factions would it be? Well, for a start, being in the plain and, large, dusty, deserty area, we got the warrior nations, obviously. They are, they live out on the range. That's where they live. They live out on the plains of Arizona. That's their home. So the warrior nations would definitely be one of the big factions involved in this scenario. If we take a look at Showdown at Retribution, it is the Enlightened versus the Union. My brain just farted there, so I had to look at the box. And it makes sense. In a small town, you'd have the Enlightened who are always trying to tinker with things, add electricity and power, supplies, etc. to make, the town work. And the Union absolutely hating the Enlightened. So it kind of makes sense for, in a small town like Redemption, I should say, that it makes sense for them to be there. Now, out in the plains, it kind of narrows it down. You could have the outlaws, that would make sense, hiding out in the mountains and the areas away from the law. Lawmen also out there searching for the outlaws, of course. But the problem with the outlaws is that they're so divided. It's not just, the cowboys, red sashes and all. You got, like, the conquistadors there as well. So that's one reason I don't think it would be the outlaws in this new box, because just of the wide range that the outlaws make. The lawmen, without the outlaws, it kind of nullifies the reasoning for the lawmen as well. Now, warrior nations, like I said, they live out in the plain, but the big thing that tells me it's warrior nations is the Superstition Mountains. These are a major sacred spot for the warrior nations. They are very important to that faction. So the Superstition Mountains out in the Arizona Badlands, having that big monument, big mountain obviously, and the faction that finds it holy, would make sense to put those two together. Now, I might be wrong because the law is kind of a bit vague here of who lives there. I believe the warrior watchers live in the actual Superstition Mountains. So that would add the Watchers to this as well. So you got the Watchers in their home, and you got the warrior nations, and fighting over a sacred, a sacred space or place for the warrior nations. It would make an interesting battle, and I think it would kind of be fun to see the warrior nations versus the Watchers. And just for clarity's sake, this is obviously very biased on my part because warrior nations and the Watchers are both my favourite factions. But the Superstition Mountains also has a big connection to the Hex as well. Now, the Hex isn't really something we see in the other games, same with the Warrior Nations and the Watchers. We don't really see them in Dystopian Wars or Armored Clash. They are very much down to Wild West Exodus. So, bringing out a box game and giving away that War Cradle are that every box game seems to be different factions over time, and having one of the three factions that aren't in the other games would make a lot of sense because it widens the scale of the lore. It's not just this massive world war, there are these small individual things happening as well, especially around Arizona and the Badlands, and of course all the towns around it, because of the three players that are there. Now, the Order of the Orshard also happens to be in the Sultanate. We can see this in some of the Dystopian Wars models for the Sultanate. So they're pretty widespread. But because the Hex is there as well, the Order also has a big presence inside the Badlands. But because of that connection, drifting away from the entire, Dystopian Wars and focusing on factions that aren't in the other games, that's why I reckon Warrior Nations and the Watchers would be the best choice. Now, the Watchers are infiltrators as well. So the fact is, there's a good chance that if you're playing Lawmen, Enlightened, if you like any of those factions that aren't the Watchers, there's a good chance some of these major players might be a Cerulean Prime. And that's fantastic. I think that's a great idea. That, even in the White House or Abraham Lincoln's Secret Service, there could be a Cerulean Prime there because no one would know. That's another reason why I think the Watchers would be a good point here, because we could see more of them, how they infiltrate within the dystopian age and how far their actual tentacles have spread, so to say. So they can see where in the world we actually know they're Cerulean Primes infiltrated within society. And this would work out well with the Badlands because that would be a big point of information and where the leaders would gather to gather the information and send it outward. So, their troops know what to do. So, a Badland Adventures, I'm going to say it's probably a campaign, which is good. Like I said, it's fantastic. Getting more eyes on the game, getting more people playing it, fantastic thing to do. But if it is a box set, a new edition, Warrior Nations versus the Watchers would be my best bet, given once again the Superstition Mountains, because it's sacred to the Warrior Nations and it's the home base to the Watchers. Having this important mountain, so important to two different factions, makes a lot of sense. And the Warrior Nations holding back the Watchers because they're on their holy ground and they want to get rid of them. And though not deliberately, but making sure that their information isn't spreading. So that's just my thoughts on this lovely picture you see in front of you. I hope it's a new box, but I guess it's a campaign. I'm not going to argue with it, and that's it. Anyway, if you want to see Wild West Exodus and you want to play it, like I said, it's going to cost you £40 to get into the game, and that's all you need. Go and look at Wayland Games down below, and you can get them there for £40. It's loads of posse boxes. Warrior Nations and Watchers are my favourite. You can even get some Samurai, and it's free delivery after £20. So you're not paying even delivery on most of that stuff anyway. And you've got it's up to 20% off all other war games, and an extra 1% off for the point system. There is also Forbidden Planet for comics, DVDs, mangas, etc. There's also My Merchandise Comics. Those links are down below. As is Skyforge. Always give Skyforge a good click. Let's get them up that Google algorithm. And finally, Patreon, because business. Bye-bye.